All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of What's Next. I'm your host, Matthew Quinn, and today we are going to talk about writer and director. So, these two very important roles, working in tandem, developing a show, have had some new, unique challenges and perhaps some benefits during this pandemic time. And so, I'm very excited today to have two guests that will kind of discuss this. I'd like to first bring into the studio Mr. Greg Wohead. Hello, Greg. Oh, don't forget your microphone. I know. Welcome. I know Zoom. This is it. Thank you. That bit worked very well. That was nice. Greg Wohead is a writer and performer who makes theater performances, one-to-one pieces, durational work, and audio experiences. Most recently has lived and worked in Los Angeles and London, and I believe you are currently in Lisbon, Portugal.
That's right. Yeah, doing some work in Lisbon. Yeah.
All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you for joining us, and with the time change and everything, making this work.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, and next to him in our studio, Miss Jessica Hanna is a Los Angeles-based theater maker. She has worked as an actor, director, choreographer, and producer with companies and spaces all over Los Angeles. In June 2006, she co-founded Bootleg Theater and was its producing and managing director. Her focus has been on new work development with local artists. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. This is great. You guys, that worked so well.
I can't take direction. Let's talk about directing.
Yeah. So thank you both. And everybody else, you guys know each other. You've worked together, which is really exciting. We're going to jump into it. But I first, a kind of a tradition of the show, or become a tradition, as you can have traditions in 2.5 months. Your pivot story. So everybody, we started a new year. We rung in the new year for January. It was looking really exciting. And then mid-March, everything dramatically changed. So Greg, how was that for you? Where were you? What was your kind of pivot moment?
Yeah, I was in London. I was living back in London for a couple of years at that point, after having been in LA for a little while. And at that point, I guess a lot of the stuff that I was doing was like touring shows that I had made before, mostly around the UK, along with making some new work and kind of like fitting those pieces together so that it kind of created some ongoing work. And so I had some tour dates booked in for the spring, as well as some working on new, some beginning to write a new piece of work. And obviously it was, as I'm sure everyone experienced, a kind of like slow process over a few weeks of like, no, I think this is still gonna happen. No, maybe we'll have to postpone for a little while.
Right.
And then, no, this is off. And it was this kind of like slow process. And I was very lucky in some ways, in that I had a few tour dates going on in the UK. I would say most of those dates that I had scheduled in, the venues still paid me the fee for them, and I was able to pay the performers that I was working with, all this kind of stuff. So generally, I would say I experienced some good luck in working with some good people in terms of that kind of stuff. So it eased some of these like financial panic right at the beginning, which is a pretty big deal. There was one piece of work which is called Crack of Dawn, which was scheduled to go on at a festival called Gift Festival in Newcastle in the UK. And that festival was a live festival, theater performance festival, that was going on in May. And Kate Craddock, who is the artistic director of that festival, decided to switch it to online. And she was very like, so the experience of like that work all going, and then the opportunity of like maybe this can be online. I think that really characterized for me those first couple of months of like what is going on. So we ended up doing, it was a durational work that lasted from sunrise to sunset, which we usually do live. And we ended up doing it on Zoom and spending those first couple of months just sort of figuring out how that was going to work. And and doing that, I think that for me, and that really took me, it was a good like emotional segue as well, because it was taking a piece of work that I had been working on for a very long time and had presented a couple of times before, so I was familiar with what it was, and it was like translating it to a different form, really. So it wasn't making up something completely new, really, but it was doing that, working it through into a different form. And I think by chance, really, that piece actually worked really interestingly through that process, because it was about things like communication and understanding, and it was very improvised, and it was able to just sort of take what the online sort of platform was able to offer in many ways. Yeah. So I would say that really got me through those first few months.
That's a great little pivot story. I mean, and it does kind of have a nice message of it's going away and now it's coming back.
Yeah.
And I really like the translation to a different form, because I think that's a lot of what's going on here and exploring this new medium. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Greg. That was wonderful. Jessica Hanna.
Yeah.
Your pivot. Oh, and Jessica, we got to give you a few love out there. You gained some love from your fans.
Oh, hey, hi. Yay. Thank you.
Simon.
Hi. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Mode. Give me the queen.
In the house. So yeah, give you some
queen.
ramp up energy for your pivot story.
Ah, yes, my pivot story. Well, I'd say I like to think of it as evolution.
Oh.
Yes. Well, because I mean, I'm trying to figure this out, right? We're continuing trying to make art, and this is the new medium. In terms of what was happening to begin with, I mean, I did experience the slow domino effect of the jobs going the year's worth of things just kind of disappearing or moving, which is fine. The heartbreaking part was I was actually 3 days away from tech on, I was directing The Wolves by Sarah DeLapp down at Cal State Long Beach. With this great team of actors and students and production people. And we were literally like on the set, about to head into tech, open the next week. And also just then walking around, the feeling, part of the beginning process for me was, or this beginning portion of the quarantine was walking around with like an art baby. I'd been just about to go into, labor and head into like giving birth to this thing that we've been working so wonderfully on, and and so it was just like, oh, what do I do with this? So that kind of like feeling of stopped art, of the making stopping, but at the same time recognizing a lot of just the gift of the pause, and also I'll circle back to it, but I saw the piece that Greg was talking about, Crack of Dawn, which was very inspirational to me. But to start to see people starting to play with the medium and then taking steps. I was directing a solo play that was supposed to go to New York called Die, which means enough in Hebrew, by Urice Barr, and we were 2-3 weeks away when we decided nope, that's not happening. And we have been working on it in a new way since then. And hopefully in November, we'll be doing a live stream of it on Twitch. And we've been on a Twitch channel I've been working on called Outpost 13. And we've been doing, that's got a whole bunch of different programs. And then this particular piece, then playing with it will be live streamed, but there's also elements of it that we have been filming or creating in different ways and trying to use what the format is that we can use, but also how does it reflect on what the piece is. And so we've been adapting it for this world. and it's good. I mean, it's exciting. It's different, and it can be. There are definitely moments of like, that's not how I imagined that.
Yeah.
You know, oh.
Yeah.
But okay, this is what we have, and I've been trying to actually I just taught a workshop for the CSU System Arts program with Bruce Lemon Jr., who you've had on the show, right?
Yeah, wonderful.
He's fantastic.
Fantastic.
But we were supposed to do a summer arts 2-week devising workshop this past summer, which got canceled. So they asked us if we'd like to do something on online, and we did two classes over 2 weeks, or over 2 weeks, and students they created something in the week, a 10-minute piece in the week, and it was so great. They were like what they came up with, the way they used the medium, but then also like what they were bringing. It was like there were a couple things where I was like, oh, that's you're playing Spaceball. That's what we do in theater. And it just gave me all the tingles. And it was like I'm watching it in the Zoom, and that's where we are right now. And I think I feel like people are arguing about like what is theater in a way that I don't find productive, just because like there are all these things. There are all these ways that we access it. I'm using the tools that I learned to make theater, so I'm going to call it theater.
Yeah.
Way. Yeah. It's funny. Bruce and I called our workshop, well, not publicly, they wouldn't put it on the website, but it's called Fuck It, Let's Try.
Yeah.
That's
it.
I mean, because it's like, I got that. Christina Wong said that in a thing. She was like, it's Zoom, try it. Go ahead.
Yep, that's it.
So like, yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as artists in terms of what it's going to be, what the product's going to be. This seems like a deep time of process.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And play and experimenting. Like this is all new. Like, oh my God, I can do this, and I can point to you, and you could do this, and it's why judge it at this point? It's just fun.
Yeah. And we're using we're not letting. I think we're using the muscles. I may not be using the muscles the way I like want to or was planning on, but it's still using muscles. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we'll talk more about those muscles and also just kind of the good things coming out of this. But I have to agree. I love the art baby comment. It was an art baby. We all had our art babies going.
Right?
Yeah. And it's tough when you stop midstream. But the pivot, both sounds like both of you. Thank you for your pivot story. It sounds like, we all went through this kind of like, oh, what? Huh? Oh. And we've got to come out. We got to do what we got to do. So I had mentioned earlier, you two actually have worked together, known each other. And have you worked as a writer-director relationship, or is it more like friends with each other's work? And can we talk a little bit about what you guys have done?
Greg's directed me.
Oh, well, that's nice. Would you like to share kind of your experiences and kind of how you worked together before this, and your kind of experiences then related to now?
Yeah, I think in a way it is interesting thinking of this. It's some of the ways that we've worked together as a kind of like writer-director sort of terminology, because I think that the first thing the first way that we ever worked together was you performed in a show of mine that I wrote. Basically, I would say I was the writer of that show, called Celebration Florida, which is a show that took place at the Bootleg as part of LAX Festival years ago, several years ago, quite a few years ago.
5, 6, something like that.
Ooh.
And that in that show, it's two unrehearsed performers who know nothing about the show before they show up to perform it. They put on headphones and are guided through the performance and what to say and do. And so Jess was one of the performers one of the nights in that show. But
can I say just about that show? I just want to drop in there that it was one of the most exciting nights I've ever had on stage. And I'm not a consistent performer anymore, but like after I came out of it, I was just like, everyone has to do this. That was the most in the moment now. place of, like, I felt just so comfortable, and the way I was taken care of and like it was what's going to happen. But Greg did an intro to me and Sunny, right? Yeah, it was Sunny. And we talked us through what was going to happen, gave us a little tester, but then it was just very much like go.
Yeah.
And it was such a thrill. I don't want to say too much about the piece, because you should, when the piece happens, you should see the piece. And if you ever have a chance to do the piece, do the piece. Seriously. I mean, honestly, it's like top secret, and there's some, like, I want to talk about it all the time, but then I'm like, oh, I can't. You should do the piece. So I can't.
You can't know about it if you want to do it.
Nope. Sorry, but you were going to say. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah. Like, yeah. I don't know, because I hadn't even thought to talk about that because that was actually the first time we worked together in some way. But there I think are like some threads from even that work that kind of go through into the way that I don't know, I guess that I think about negotiating things now, but I mean, I'm sure that will come out. But we started working together. I was developing a piece called Call It a Day, which eventually became, a version of it became Crack of Dawn, which is this show that I did in May. But originally, and it's a convoluted story to explain in too much depth. There's a version of it which is called Call It a Day, which is now a shorter theater piece, which is more written, and a longer durational version, which is more improvised, called Crack of Dawn. They're essentially under the same umbrella of the project. Anyway, I invited Jess to work with me in developing that. And so in developing that, we spent a lot of time in this room at UCLA, just improvising for hours and hours and hours. So in a way, I mean, the people I worked with as performers, Jess being one, were in some ways like the writers of the piece, and it was like not as clear cut of an idea as a writer director, but we were all sort of shaping and generating and doing that kind of together. So we worked together in a few phases of that. And then you performed in the live version of the durational work, which took place at LAX Festival a couple of years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
18, something like that.
I think it was, 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of the first few times we presented that work. So the show is loosely based on, the idea from the show comes from a time about 10 years ago, when me and my partner at that time met an Amish couple in central Illinois and sat around their table, had a conversation with them. And so the work that came out of the idea of that conversation is a work that's about some attempt to understand what it might be like to be someone else who is very different from you, has a very different context for the world. And therefore, in some ways, was a roundabout way of maybe trying to think about and explore some of these, like, cultural or social or political divides that feel so potent. But a way of making work that was sort of political in that way, but it wasn't so obviously about that kind of stuff, but was underneath it. I'm starting to babble now. I don't even know where I'm going by saying that. So the piece is we're going to keep talking about it, but in this show, there's me and three other performers are always people who perform the show, the amount of people who perform the show, and we sort of stand in for the original four people, me and my partner at that time, and the two Amish, the Amish couple, and we kind of, over the course of we perform it from sunrise to sunset, with basically no breaks. I mean, we can incorporate a kind of improvised, can I go use your bathroom kind of thing. But eating meals is part of, we do it as in work, as part of the work. And it's all kind of very open and improvised. And it starts to be this very like flowing, sometimes not so flowing, kind of conversation from a bank of material that we have developed over time, but is very loose. And so we did that at LAX Festival a few years ago, and you performed in that.
Yeah. The conversation of the day ends up being here, this is one of the things, because when I saw what you made online for the GIF festival, it really, I mean, I have connections to it personally, but then I also had moments of just like, oh, this is so interesting, watching a durational piece this way, where like the thing of coming to it live, right? Someone would make a commitment to come, or have to like, well, I'm going to go away and then I'm going to physically going to come back, and things like that. So, but in this form, and because of the time difference, I want to say it started at 9 or 10 o'clock here. And I like hopped on and watched like some of it in the beginning, and I was like, but it's like I was on my phone for a while. And then when and then I got home and I put it on my laptop and I was watching, but I was also doing some things, but I was also in it, and I'd come back to it. And then and I watched a bunch of it, and then I was like, I have to go to bed. So then I went to I think I woke up in the middle of the night at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, let me just see what's going on. And it was so great because I could like hop in, and there is, and it was like, it attached. And then I'd come back, and then I came back to it the next day, and like I watched a bunch of it in the morning. And there was a point too where I was like, oh, we've got like an hour and a half to go. I'm in. I'm sticking with it the whole time. But it was such an interesting feeling of audience in terms of being able to have something durational and being able to come into it and out of it without any feeling of, oh, I'm doing this wrong, I have to sit here for. Right. It was very free. I mean, I found in the forum, it was very freeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was for me one of the most important things that came out of doing the piece in that way. Because I mean, so we did it when we do it live. We do it sitting around the table, and the audience are around, in a kind of outer ring beyond the table. And so in order to see that, you can kind of drop in and out, but you have to, when it was in LA, you have to like drive to the place, find parking, go into the thing, sit down for a while and be like, well, I'm here now. I'm going to sit here for a while. And you're sitting there and you're watching it and you can't really do anything else.
Right.
And then you choose to leave. And then when we did it online, we did it on Zoom. It was me and 3 other performers, all in our own homes. And we made it, I wanted to make it a little bit like lifted, a little bit like something other than your average kind of Zoom meeting, so we all had the same like physical backdrop, and we all had completely exactly matching outfits, and we had microphones and things like this just to help it be a little bit held. And obviously it's a completely different, it's quite a different offer for the audience to be able to drop in and out in that way. And there was a specific invitation made when people booked a ticket that said, you can join us for the whole time. You can pop in, you can pop out, you can put it on the background while you're doing something else. And that was deliberately an offer exactly for this reason. So you feel like I can't fully pay attention to this, therefore I'm gonna close it, And that was one of the really nice things about some of the, talking to some people afterwards, which was that because the performance took place absolutely continuously for 15 hours.
Wow.
So good.
So, I think that it meant that we were kind of accompanying people. We were kind of like an overlay throughout on top of people's normal lives, And so people would be like, oh yeah, I just put the sound on while I was doing some gardening. Or there was some people, someone posted a photo online of that had their laptop on the kitchen counter while they're making dinner and things like that. And that was really, really nice. And it was such a, and also it took place towards the beginning of May, I think. So it was, I thought, I was thinking at that time, like, because it was in that moment where I felt like a lot of people or theaters or places that I was in contact with were putting up loads of like videos of performances, and like there's so much like to watch. And whenever I tried to sit down and watch something, I couldn't. I felt like there was very rarely a time where I actually sat down and watched an entire like hour and a half or 2 hour show in one go. I couldn't do it. I was like feeling frazzled and all this kind of stuff. And so I think it also came at a time in the course of the pandemic stuff where like it felt like a good offer to make to people that was gentle and that didn't require a lot of focused energy. And so I think there's a combination of things about what that work already was, and then what the platform allowed it to be differently, and the time that it was sort of offered to people,
Well, I want to jump in. There's some comments I want to bring up. I do love that first of all, that show sounds phenomenal. And the duration concept and all that is great. And I appreciate that you called out what I think a lot of people are doing with online theater. Like, it's okay to have it in the background, and it's, you've got to live life and all that. That said, as I say that, some comments popped up. Donna Johnson, love this approach. I think of Taylor Mack's 24-hour theater event. Though part of the magic is being there for 24 hours. But what about from a producing model? And then I always want to bring the second comment up that she also, do we compromise the value of the art by creating art that can be run in the background? And it's an excellent point, because there is a reality of time and that sometimes we do that, but does that compromise if we know doing that? Thoughts on? Good comment.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Thank you, Donna. Well, there's a thing, giving space for audience to have more autonomy. I know can be it's been a conversation, with when we were in spaces, right, about what that means. And I think the accessibility conversation about being a little more relaxed about things is more interesting to me personally. I know that, I get the traditionalist, and I get the, I understand it, because I love theater, and I will sit tight in the seat. But I think there is something about like that I can come back to it, or it might keep my curiosity up more. If I know that I'm not being, it's in a box, but I don't have to get in the box.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think all these sorts of questions around like producing models and value are really interesting ones, and all of like I will be the first to say I don't have any solid like this is definitely the way it is, because I think especially in this moment, like it's all like up for question, and I think it still should be, and these questions are really important to ask. And I think so. I guess some of the things that I think is like this with it. I guess what I can say is that when I'm thinking about value and the work that I am wanting to make, and certainly wanted to make in this instance, I do feel like that there was a value in that specific offer that yes is different than like. It's a different kind of attention than maybe we're used to asking for, I guess, as theater makers, where the familiar thing is to be like everyone is here, everyone is paying attention, to in a certain kind of way for a certain amount of time. What that does to a producing model, and like what the kind of monetary exchange, and what that does for value, and what people feel is worth what, I don't really know, but I do think that there is some kind of artistic value that that to me feels worth being allowed to breathe and to be possible.
Mhm.
And I think if anything, like in this, one of the things that interests me in this, in negotiating how this all works, is actually thinking about my relationship to, I don't know, to think about my relationship to like why I'm doing what I'm doing, and what, to what end, and what are the offers there, and what is the space for different kinds of offers at different times.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is maybe a rambling answer, but I think it's important to sit with these things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a good time to sit and again play.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's put it up so we can talk about. You got to do it.
Yeah.
To do it, to kind of look at
I
it.
want to
Yeah,
jump
please,
in though, in
Jessica.
terms of the producing model and the supporting the making of the, or supporting the artists and the supporting the making of the art. We're in a place where we have to start. I mean, what I agree with all of what Greg was saying. We have to evolve this, and I think being able to sit with this and figure out both aligning ourselves both artistically and personally with our beliefs because of the way that, well, we have to in this world. I think, and being able to then figure out how to support those ideas monetarily is going to be something that we're going to come, there are options here, but especially I will say in the US, where we don't have as much there, or I know it's tight all over the world, but in terms of arts funding, it's a little more difficult to find here. And so I think this time is also, it's not about evolving what ourselves, our art, but also then the support structure that we make for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do we support both each other? I mean, the Patreon, Patreon is everywhere, right? Everyone's got a Patreon, which I find all of these, the GoFundMe's and the Patreons, I'm just like, we're all just being socialists, aren't we? What is the, but so we're supporting each other in different ways. And like, if we're already doing that, what are the ways that we can take those models and then asking our government to support us in these things. And maybe it's about coming with plans, having new technology that we are now using that makes accessibility different. So then we could fundraise in a different way. I mean, I have no answers, but it feels like there's so many more, like the pieces are becoming clearer. So maybe the way they connect is going to happen next, I'm hoping, in the process.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, and I think also I guess I should also say this. I was fortunate enough for this particular work at that particular time to be taking place in the UK, and I had public funding for it, public arts funding from the UK, which did allow us. While we did have a fee from the festival, we did make up what, because I was paying myself and 3 other performers and a production manager who was going to be production managing the show live, and who then figured out all how we were, operated on Zoom and did all of that, figured out how that change happened. And I was able to sustain that and to be able to pay everyone because of public funding in the UK.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I want to give a shout out to some of the comments that people are following this conversation. John Tipton Myers, great show so far, guys. Some of these questions sound like the answers are yet to be discovered as opposed to already there. They're already agreed, especially considering an industry and economy that has eliminating, outsourcing, automating as it increasingly going virtual. So yeah, all of us are going through changes. It's not just the arts, it's the economy in general, it's everyday people. Donna, back again. This is great. No one has the answers, but I love the ones that come to y'all. So, yep, that's what you got to do. We got to play. One question that came up to my mind when you were talking, and this is something that artists have been discussing, producers have been discussing, are the numbers of people that you're able to get. So as we're trying to monetize it, one of it is, well, I don't have just a 50 or 90 seat house. I don't need that $15, $20 ticket or more. I can make it $10, but I can have a Zoom room with 1,000 people in it. Did you find that with the versions of your show in terms of what the new model of online kind of did with it?
Yeah, well, for this particular show, I mean, so we were working with, so it's funny because we were working with the festival quite closely to figure out between us what we felt was appropriate for to work all that, because also they had the festival was working on a pay what you decide basis, so all tickets were sort of, you know, free to book, but a kind of the offer again in the was to pay what you decide for it. And we that for that we didn't we didn't know what was going to happen with how many people, and so we only had capacity for 100 people, and it filled up, you know, most of the time it was full, and so we didn't. It hit its limit, but in a way it was also a little bit deliberate because we wanted it to. We didn't want it, and we were only on a kind of Zoom webinar, and it wasn't streamed out to YouTube or Facebook or anything like this. Kind of deliberately, well, it was deliberately because we wanted it to feel like somehow a more intimate experience. But certainly, it was an amazing thing to be able to show that work, which was going to be in Gateshead. I misspoke earlier. It's in Newcastle. Newcastle and Gateshead are very close to each other, and each one gets really pissed off if you mistake it for the other.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's a big UK. But and only the people who lived locally or nearby there would have been able to see it. But in this case, Jess was able to see it.
Yeah.
I'm from Texas. My family in Texas got to see one of the only pieces of work they've ever been able to see of mine. You know, people from everywhere were able to see it. And because it was a durational piece that lasted 15 hours, somebody at some time zone somewhere, it was going to work at some time, at some point. And so people got to see the work live. And that was a really incredible experience, and that's certainly something that we found as far as being able to show the work and to allow that work to make contact with people who would never have been able to see it. Was fantastic.
It seems to me also a really appropriate piece in this kind of COVID time and this sense of like virtually we're all connected around the world now, and I'm having talks commonly with people from Sweden and Brazil. We had a festival with 3 shows around the world. A 15-hour piece is perfect for that. Like, you just follow the sun around the world. That's great. So that's a really interesting piece to kind of look at to start this idea of what the before time was and how a piece kind of existed. And now as we're playing like Zoom versus OBS versus this, and what's the best platform for this piece moving forward. And for either of you or both of you, as we're now in the thick of it, this isn't so much transitioning a piece. How are you finding creating new work in this type of scenario? And is it an adaptation that you're looking at, or are you looking at like, I'm blank slate, what does this program do, and what can I do in this? And what is that sense of collaboration now with a writer director in terms of either developing work or working with new work? Does that kind of give you something?
Yeah. I'll jump in, Greg, if you don't. I've been working on some new plays with playwrights, and doing some private readings for the most part. I mean, there are some that are public, but for the most part, most of the stuff has been private, and I'd call it workshop. I mean, it feels like a very workshop. This medium feels like it is very useful right now for playwrights in terms of, it gets to a point where it's like, oh, this would be where we get it on its feet, and then we learn some more. So getting to that stage, and then what do we do then? That's a good question. And I've been trying different things, but for the most part, like I took Peter J. Quo's workshop, and one of the big, huge takeaways from that I've tried to talk about and use in when I'm working with actors is this: literally stand up, figure out how to get the camera at your eye line, and then we can, because then all of a sudden body is engaged in a different way, and it's not the same, but there is some conversation that we can have as director actor in terms of where you are in space. I'm actually currently in pre-production. I'm going to direct Feifu and her friends for Cal Poly Pomona, and it's all going to be done online. And so, and with, so it's like not only working with designers about how do you tell the story in this format, but then also we're going to get to a place where I'm going to work with actors in their own homes. And one of the things as a director, also trying to remember, I mean, it's a good thing to remember anyways, but particularly in these rooms, is I have to meet people where they are. So trying not to, not that I'm a pushy director, but like notice that I'm talking to you and you're in your kitchen, and so that to have the conversation, we can have a conversation about stuff about the play, but then in terms of performance, maybe it's about going a little smaller instead of going bigger, or maybe it's about like, what are the ways that I can help so that so the actor can find their way in the space where they have to use more imagination.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. I think for actors, this medium, like your imagination has got to be firing in such a large way, because you're not only creating the shared invisible space for the audience, you're creating it in your head with your acting partner, who hopefully I'm looking at the right way. If you're going to do that kind of blocking in terms of you're going to actually do it, it's like, oh, then I have to create. I'm listening. I'm going to hear everything, and I'm going to create it here for myself, and then I'm going to work with it. Wow, that's wow. It's I mean hard. And then also the actor also has to be their own prop person and pour their own drinks, and do all of everything is on the actor, and so then I need to remember that as a director, and I need to make sure that I have care for that, for the artists that I'm working with because of that.
Yeah, that's a great note, a big note. And not so much old from the before times. The directors take care of their actors. You're just being aware of the new environment.
Mm-hmm. You have to be able to. I have to be able to, or I'm working on being able to verbalize, right? Because as opposed to like I used to, come over and do a funny dance and make sound and be physical, and I could get my points across, or come up with something new or inspire something. Okay, my I can be that physicality for myself now, but it's not going to come across the same way. So I have to figure out the words. I got to really work on the words. Yeah,
it's what we're learning now, the terminology and that back and forth. As a writer, Greg, listening to Jessica, how do you feel that kind of the writer's experience with this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I guess I can speak from my own experience, and that really is, to pick back up on something that Jess, you said earlier on, which is to like a lot of my work for myself. Sorry, there's a siren going by.
Lisbon. I love Lisbon. Go ahead. Yeah,
such a good siren.
It's a great like this really loud trolley that goes by there. Anyway, but what I was saying, it's coming back, I think.
It's coming back around. It heard we liked it.
They must be chasing someone back and forth. Anyway, okay, as I was saying, I think for me, I have sort of gone through a process within myself of getting to a point where I'm like, it's actually okay not to be producing a lot right now, or in kind of this recent time, and it's okay that I'm not super on top of like how every sort of technology is working and how best to utilize it. And actually, I think for a few years now, I've sort of been saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice to like get off this hamster wheel of like constantly like creating stuff and like putting stuff out there and figuring out who I'm going to try and meet and like do all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, now, okay, I had this kind of time at the beginning of doing stuff where I was like, okay, we're going to do this with this called a Crack of Dawn project. And I did a couple of things on Zoom near the beginning of it all. And then it was like, okay, I can actually just like read some books.
Right?
Yeah.
It took it's taken me quite a process actually of giving myself some permission to do that.
Mhm.
And realizing like how out of the habit of that, this kind of like, I'm just gonna like sit here for a second and just like take some stuff in, rather than worry too much about what I'm putting out and at what rate and in comparison to whom, you know. And I think that for me has been something that I've really been trying to continue to allow myself to do, because I think so in that way I feel actually really quite a little bit more fed as a writer. There's a project that I'm working on that will be a more written project than this other recent one that was more improvised. And I'm actually like, I was going to be making on a much tighter timeline. It was going to be like ready in the summer, and really I have hardly actually written the material at all. And I've just allowed myself to be like, I think maybe I'll be working on this for a much longer period of time. And part of the working on that not all of the working on it is writing it. And I can take some stuff in and I can talk to people and I can just take it a bit slower, because for me, I found that really valuable. And for me, I've started to realize how actually important that is. And that has been for me.
Yes.
So important to recharge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And because life too, it's not just as an artist needing to recharge, as a human.
Yeah.
In this crazy world,
Yeah.
we need to kind of pause and take some time with that. So for both of you then, as you've been kind of exploring and playing, and it just sounds wonderful what you're doing, what have you kind of realized? Jessica, you mentioned little notes that you got from Peter J. Quo's class. What have you found as kind of the challenges? And I'm going to combine this question, since we're getting close to the top of the hour, the challenges, and then also kind of the additional silver linings. What kind of benefits? Like, Greg, we talked about your show, people being able all over to see it. They don't have to get in their car, find a parking place and do it. And for a 15-hour piece, that sounds much more approachable for people to click in. What have you both kind of discovered, the pluses of this? And I would put, Greg, you're taking time to read. I mean, we finally have time to do that. I mean, reading, right?
Yeah, totally.
So what else have kind of been what have you enjoyed as a writer, as a director? I'm doing things that I couldn't be doing, or, experimenting with things I hadn't, as well as kind of, this is the tough part. This is what I can't equate to this new medium.
I find myself, I dare say, knock wood, as busy. And it's the other thing about the accessibility is being able to work on numerous different projects, because I'm not having to like literally go outside, go to a place, come back, do the thing, this is, the actual physical distance traveling, that would, put a lot of, and it's not just LA, but being able to work in a number of different ways, through this medium has been really, really great. I'm finding maybe, the ways that we don't necessarily have, like, we can still make art, but not have it be online too. I'm producing an experience, or a scheduled audio walk experience that Katie Lindsay has created. Called A Walk in My Neighborhood. Yeah. Well, I'll be putting up more about it in the next couple days. But yeah, we're gonna start that October 15th. But this is something I would, we've been having this conversation about, is it theatrical? Is it whatever? It has elements of theater, but it's an audio walk.
Yeah.
That's very, and it's for one, it reminds Greg, I've been like thinking about all of Greg also does a lot of, has made a lot of one-on-one experiences that I really have enjoyed. So it has some stuff that I already really dig about that. But this moment of, this is Katie is a director, a stage director, who is also wanting to express herself in a different, or as having something she wants to express, can't do it in the same way that we normally would. So finding a different way or a different outlet or a different form or those kinds of things. So like that is really exciting. And that we don't have to, I don't have to just be a director of stage. I don't have to just be a director of film. I don't have to, and that we have all the skills we have and how they work in a lot of these different mediums. I think that's been one of the most exciting things for me. Yeah, for sure.
That is, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Greg, anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that as well. Just like kind of thinking differently about, because if we're not able to use the kind of skills that we have or the interest that we have in the way that we might be used to using them, of discovering of other things that those might be, and other things, these kind of like confusing some of the boundaries there. But I think other than some of that definitely the silver linings that you've mentioned, it's kind of part of it for me is like I found myself having more conversations like this, conversations about like real conversations about really what's going on and really how things are working and really what, how you are or whatever that may be. But I think I've found myself having different conversations with different people than I probably would have had otherwise, and having like big conversations and trying to really dig into stuff, which I love and I have really valued. So
yeah, it really helps that we're all in kind of the same storm. And so we have, it's not like, oh, I'm here in LA and it's really bad here in LA and I'm going through all this, but you over in Europe, is everything sunny, and we're all we have the shared experience. And then turning to each other to do it, to help and support. Do you find yourself calling a lot more? I mean, I find myself busy too. It's not necessarily monetized busy. There's not always like a paycheck coming in with my busyness, but I'm talking to an artist right now in Lisbon, and Jessica Hanna, and every week I'm meeting new people, and people are very open. There really is a sense with the community, I think, of sharing knowledge.
Yes.
Oh, you got to try this program. This is cool. Oh, you should work with this person. They're good. I mean, that always has existed, but I think it's opened the doors. And that I don't have to fly Greg in from Portugal if I wanted to work with him.
One of my favorite, apparently, or I was told this, I have never checked it because I like it, so I'm going to say it's true, which is that an early definition of the word competition is to strive together. And I personally like that. I dig that, and especially it feels like that's where we, as a community, as art making community, right? What are the ways that we can strive forward together and bring everybody? I mean, the conversation about racial equity in the country and also within the community of the national and local. I mean, I think these are necessary conversations that have to happen, and this is part of the time that we are in, where we and we get the gift of time. And some space, right? And being able to, like, I mean, what you're talking about, Greg, about aligning with our beliefs more, I think that also is helpful as we step into these places of having to make change. And I think that's the gift of these times, with the backdrop of horrible pandemic, and grief. And again, sorry, I keep on, but the thing about grief and the time that we're in, and I think the role of the storyteller, the artist, of the community, is to help us process our feelings and our process, and I figure out who we can be through what we put out there as art. And there's a lot of grief, and that's going to take a long time to process. And it doesn't mean we have to make sad things all the time or whatever, but we need to have opportunities for us to experience these things. And the more we change the systems, the more people can have those experiences, and hopefully then move the culture forward, as Taylor Mack would say.
Yes, move the culture forward.
Move the culture forward.
Yeah, I agree. And a very important conversation is happening. And like you said, we have the time for it and the connectivity.
Yes.
You know, like it's amazing. The Zoom thing has been around for like 10, 15 years. And like now we're like, oh, wow, I could be talking to these people and having like conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Something that came up earlier that I was very excited because part of the show is we're really trying to give that artists are out there working, we're doing things, and when the doors are open, we're back, and there's hope, and there's a lot of great stuff going on. And what I love is when we have guests from other continents where things are kind of chugging at a different rate than California. There is some movement. There are places opening and then closing, but there is definitely a sense of a physical distance horizon where the spaces will open, actors will be on stage separated, audience will be separated. How's that kind of happening in Europe in your neck of the woods, Greg?
Yeah, well, this is why I'm in Lisbon right now, working on a show that is going to happen in November next month, and live in a place with people. And I was I'm working with a company. I was invited to work with a company who's Portuguese, a Portuguese company called Cão Solteiro, which means single dog in Portuguese. And they invited me to make this show with them probably about a year ago. And so this has been planned since before it all kicked off. And when it all started happening, we thought we started meeting weekly on Zoom to figure out what we were going to do. And so the way it is, the rules here now, I think they're figuring out the seating because everyone has to be 2 meters apart and wearing masks, and audience members have to remain seated in the performance unless there's some really specific, thing that happens. We have to be a certain distance away from the performers or from the audience. There's 3 of us performing in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, the show, we were going to be doing the show in a theater, a kind of fairly standard theater that's familiar to us all. So the theater was supposed to have building works done in the summer. It couldn't, obviously, because of all the stuff going on. So now those building works are going on when we're supposed to do the show. So now we're doing the show in a nightclub called Lux, because there's no dancing and nightclubbing going on in this nightclub. So other things that to do, in it. And so it's got like a lighting rig, it's got a really good sound system, but it's a dance, it's a dance club. And so this is where we're doing the show. And so there's not a traditional kind of audience setup. And so we, the set designer is sort of designing the seating as part of the whole thing, which means that we can put the chairs anywhere, so they can be 2 meters apart. And so we're all kind of rolling with it in that way. And because in the whole lead up through most of this year, we didn't know whether we were going to be able to do it live. So at a certain point, has looked possible for a while, and it's going to be. But as part of like figuring out how it was all going to work, we're basically making 2 separate things. One of which is the live show, which an audience comes and sees, and one of which is online. And so both take place at the same time, and so you can engage in either way. And they're again, coincidentally, in a way that worked out really nicely, the work is also a collaboration with a filmmaker, and it always has been from the beginning of the piece. So it works out well, because really what we're all doing when we're putting stuff online is making a film. So it actually works out kind of nicely, and so the work is in some way about the relationship between performance and film, and that's actually coincidentally what it was going to be anyway, an exploration. And so it's just kind of working out in that way where we're sort of really riding a wave of doing things because we have to, and sort of being able to make it work with what the artistic exploration of it is, you know. So we're really just taking it day by day as we go, and sort of trying to be as responsive as we can. But yeah, it looks like we're going to be doing a live performance next month.
I love it, and hybrid. Yeah, I know, right?
Totally.
It's very hybrid, though.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
I think that may be a model that more people look at. Like, why not? I can have all of it together. I can do my live show and still get my parents from Texas, my family from Texas to come see it. I mean, that's
exactly. It will be. We've kind of talked very specifically how we didn't want the online version to be a kind of, you know, set stream of the theater show. Yeah. So as part of what happens in the show, there is someone with a camera on the stage as a kind of performer and shooting things, and that's live.
I love that.
Online film, you know. So it's really two different things to see.
Oh, that sounds great. Great. Well, speaking of, as you're mentioning this, which sounds very cool, how can we hear about this? How do we get some information? And got a website?
Yeah. So I think that technically they have not fully announced the program for the festival, but it will be part of a festival called Alcantara Festival, which I will put the link on my website there, which you'll see there as soon as their full program goes live.
That's great. And it's so exciting. Like Jessica's like showing too, like this is great to hear these stories of a piece opening up somewhere in the world. It's very happy. How about you, Jessica? What's kind of coming down the pipe with you?
What's coming down the pipe with me? I'm producing this audio experience, so that'll start October 15th. That's called A Walk in My Neighborhood by Katie Lindsay. And then the solo piece that I've been directing by Reese Barr, written and performed by Reese, is called Die, and that will be on Outpost 13, which is a Twitch channel, Outpost_13, where I also do once every month-ish, we do something called Where You're At, where we talk to, a couple of us talk to folks in LA who are doing amazing things during this pandemic, like Christina Wong and the Auntie Sewing Circle, or Auntie Sewing Squad, excuse me. And then John Eric Concordia, and he runs Park's Finest over here, which is a great restaurant that has been feeding frontline workers. So we've been trying to highlight folks, and it's been really great working on that. Outpost 13. What's the other thing? There's so many things.
Yeah, that's good, Jessica.
I guess check my website when I will update it. I will
update that website. Greg will update his website. Miles and I are fighting over getting Jessica's banner up there. Now it's up there. Technology.
Appreciate you.
Well, I've got to say, we could keep going. I know Jonathan Tipton Myers had another comment that would spiral off into it. So thank you, Jonathan. Sorry we can't get to that. But both of you, thank you so much for joining me on this show. This was wonderful conversation. And more importantly, thank you for all you're doing to keeping art alive out in this COVID world. It really is exciting to hear about your projects, how you are finding this as a time to reflect and do a little reading, as well as kind of take on projects and experimenting in new realms of this medium. It really is this kind of translation of what we did, like you said, your tools as a director, and applying it to these this new medium, and it's exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing all your work and the new work to come out. And I'm also really excited when we could all meet in the theater, see a show, and then have a drink afterwards. That is in our future. But for now, thank you both for coming. And for the audience, everyone out there, thank you so much for your comments and everything. That was wonderful. Really good to hear from you. We got some shout outs here. Christina Wong is fantastic. Trying to get her on the show, Jessica. I'm going to be contacting you to make that happen.
She is a busy woman. Let me tell you.
I know. I see her like everywhere, and I'm like,
no, I mean, she'd be a great one because she is making it. She is putting her work out there and making new stuff, and it's great. Yeah.
Love it. Well, it's been great. And next week, I'm very excited to have Noah Nelson and Caitlin Schiller from the immersive scene. So the immersive world has had kind of an interesting pivot with everything going on, and virtual reality and all that technology is really interesting. And we're also looking at bringing back some guests previously to talk about some specific digital theater pieces have been up and looking at it from a critic's point of view. So hopefully you'll come join us. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And again, keep art alive, keep it going. Thank you so much. We're going to get through this. Thanks for checking in. What's next? Take care, everyone.